Today, we're going to tackle compensation. Now, if you've ever been in a situation where you're trying to figure out what compensation range should I use for a role, this video is for you. But also, I've worked with a lot of compensation leaders who are spending tens of thousands of dollars with some of the bigger platforms trying to figure out how we should set our compensation plan. And in a recent podcast interview that we did on the Headcount Experts podcast, one of our guests was explaining how they walked through the whole process of building their own compensation tracker to continuously update the compensation methodology based on what's happening in the market, and how that became a little bit more predictive than some of the reporting-based approaches that the big firms are currently using. So if you want to spin this up yourself, hopefully you'll find exactly what you need in this video. We're going to have everything ready to go in the resource section. So as soon as you go to learn.meanderhq.com, go to resources, you'll be able to find the resource pack in here as soon as we finish recording this video. And it's going to give you everything you need to get started and then kind of build up from there. So in this session today, we're going to walk through what you'll get, how to operate it, and really where you could take that next steps. So once you've downloaded the package from the resource library, you'll find a file that will be zipped, and in the file you'll find a number of different folders and a couple of getting started guides. So if I open this getting started guide, this is going to give you everything you need to keep going. And I'm going to walk you through essentially what we're going to do here. It'll just give you an example of what you need. This is going to give you an updated weekly scheduled data pull where Claude Cowork, which is what we're going to use today, is actually going to go off and look at competitor job listings. It's going to look at any public data sources that we have, and you can update this based on the sources file that we're going to include in here. But the other thing we're going to do is actually upload our current compensation. Obviously, we want to remove any identified information out of that because we're going to be using it in a project, creating an example in this folder. So even if you don't have that data set to work around with, you can play around with this a little bit, configure it to exactly what you want to see, and then kind of build it up from there. One of the things that we're going to see when we run this is we're going to get a update each day or each week with an executive summary of where our current compensation sits according to our competitors, as well as any kind of trends. So we can see if a new company opened down the road and they're going to start to try and steal all of our senior AI engineers, then we'll be able to understand pretty quickly what's happening and actually come up with some kind of solutions to try and solve for that with kind of stay bonuses or ensuring that the managers are checking in with their team and basically just trying to prevent attrition. In the file, you'll find all the folders. This is all set up so that Claude Cowork is going to operate this effectively. I'm going to shrink this down and jump into the actual Claude Cowork section here. So if I expand this, you'll be able to see exactly what we're doing here. I use the Claude app on my desktop. If you're using a different tool, there's going to be a million different ways that you could do this. I like Claude because it seems to be the simplest approach to get something up and running very quickly. But we'll go over into Cowork and we'll go into projects. And what I did here is just create a new project, and I used an existing folder. And I did this once I'd downloaded the file, unzipped it, and I actually put the file onto my desktop. So you can see here in the example, we have the compensation Intel example right here on my desktop, and that's just going to help me to get access to that very quickly. So go back to Claude, and we wired this up to the context for the folder in my desktop. So what I did is click here on add context, choose a folder, and then I added the comp data tracker folder that I put on my desktop. So what it's going to do is use that for all of the references it's going to pick up as it's going through this workflow. And it's also going to drop the files back. I'm going to take a look at what the files show in a minute. To continue setting this up, what we want to do is actually just point Claude Cowork to this folder. And if we look at the README, it's going to tell you exactly what this file is going to do. So we're going to open the folder in Cowork, going to configure the roles. We're going to drop any internal data. If you can't put this in, it's no problem, but it will give you more accurate insights into what your compensation looks like. The one that we've included here is fully synthetic because we're not going to use any kind of live data to share with anyone. Review all the sources and then kick off the weekly schedule. So if I show you what each of those looks like, we can see what the config file looks like. So in our roles to track folder, we have 12 different roles. So these are the different roles that we expect to hire for, and we want to understand how we are compared to the market, and also how our existing employees may be impacted by changes in the market, just to keep our compensation competitive. And so this is not going into comp strategy necessarily, but this is all the data that's going to inform that. Next, we're going to have our sources, and this is actually telling us where we're actually going to go to find information out to get the data that we need. And so one of the things that has been a real boost to compensation data recently is that job boards now have to include pay transparency data. And so all of these states are going to give us job postings with a salary range. And so if we can pull those job postings in, we're going to get the salary range. We know with a higher degree of accuracy how much our competitors are paying. We'll use government public data sets and then any voluntary disclosures. There's a bunch of other sites that we may want to look at. I've excluded these from the sources here because they have terms of service that mean that we can't ethically scrape their websites. You may want to go on kind of one-off to go and scrape these. If I was doing a kind of an individual search, what I would probably do is just kind of sanity check whatever we're getting from our Excel file against these sources. But a lot of these are also self-reported, and so there is some element of bias in there. And we're also going to look at any manual sources that we have. So if you do have a file from one of these large firms that provide these sources, you can actually drop them in the sources folder in here. And so we can look at, in here, we've got, these are the sources that will have been scraped previously. Any kind of internal comp data we've included in here. So again, synthetic data set, I'm not sharing any information that you wouldn't normally see, but these are the first 100 rows for what would be a sample employee data pool with their base salary and everything kind of included in here. And then we have analysis, which is not included this run. That would be a more advanced version. What I want to do is actually do some kind of regression analysis to figure out how is comp changing over time. What are all the variables that we may be considering? And whereas this is hopefully going to give us an accurate point of view on where comp lies today, what we might want to know is where is comp going next year so that we can set our 2027 compensation bands appropriately and make sure that we're still competitive in the market. The output is going to give us what we need, and we're going to come into that next. And then the archive is where it's actually going to take previous runs and drop them. The way I've set this up, it's going to run once a week, and you can run that yourself to set that up too. And once it runs, it's going to show you the kind of full run in here. It's going to tell you exactly what it's doing. Once you make updates to things like the sources and drop more information in, obviously all of this is going to be set up to run. But one of the first things that I like to do when I've set this up is to click run now. So that's where we're going to get to. But for now, what we're going to do is set up the project. So we've pulled all the kind of project information in. Then we're going to take the kickoff prompt, and we're essentially just going to copy this and drop it into the chat here. So I'm not going to run this because it's going to take a little bit of time. And instead of watching me do that, we're going to jump into the output, exactly what you're going to find once you've run that. We'll go back to this comp intelligence run, and we'll take a look at what we're actually going to get when we let me zoom in. We're actually going to get. So the most important piece, I think, is this first executive summary page, because that's going to give us the information that we need in order to report out to CHRO, to a head of compensation strategy, a head of TA, who's actually going to be looking at how competitive are we in the market? Can we actually close the candidates that we're looking for, or do we need to shift our sourcing strategy? And it's just going to give us a headline where we have risk, where we're going to win, any kind of competitive movement as well. Again, this is all based on fake company data, but the actual run did look at live market data as of today, May 19th, 2026. And so this is, as kind of like live and updated as you can get, and you can imagine how much time this would actually take you to do yourself if you were actually kind of building this analysis, or you had a comp analyst on the team to run this for you. The summary dashboard is going to give us, the different roles, and it's going to give us our market spread, how many postings we found. This is actually just looking at prior week over week findings, but it's going to give us our median market point. We didn't pull any job postings for these two roles. Obviously, this is kind of an initial run, small sample set, and we've limited the number of sources that we would potentially use. So the more sources you have, the more accurate your ranges are going to be, and so your midpoint is going to be hopefully more believable. You can go into the full market detail, and you can actually go into the actual roles here and see what roles Claude has pulled, and then look at comparison for different geographies. So I think we defined SF, New York, and Seattle as kind of three main areas, with remote as one. And then I think probably one of the most important things that we're going to do here is look at our internal salary data and then compare that to the market. This is what a lot of kind of comp analysis is focused on. And the reason for that is that with internal data as well, you can sometimes infer whether your compensation is competitive based on the attrition rate within the team. And so we do have an attrition signal on this side, on this tab, where you can see, what is a high attrition, what is a low attrition. We can look at some of these roles where we have a 25% attrition rate for a senior product manager, and the median base there was 200,000. And we look at our senior product managers here, we can see that, we kind of have a pretty wide spread. And so this remote product manager could potentially be a risk, but we don't have any market data to actually go and have a look at that. So this is maybe where we want to enrich more data. But the thing that I really want to look at here is the gap percentage. And this is showing us where are we underpaying and where are we overpaying against the market. So in this case, we have a senior software engineer who is being paid almost 20% above market rates. So that would be something to flag and look at and say, is this realistic based on the expectations of this role? How does it compare to, their peer here in New York? Is it just that we have to pay, $20,000 more because we've hired him in SF? And that actually gets you kind of talking through the actual deltas here. The other flag here is these two roles down here are well below market. There's probably a lot of recruiters watching this, and no surprise, recruiters are kind of undervalued based on the level of effort they have to put in to do their work. And if you're seeing that, maybe this is going to push you to increase your salary ranges to stay more competitive and keep your recruiters for longer. And as we know, for any of the capacity planning work that we've done, before you can even start hiring for the organization, you actually have to build the recruiting capacity to deliver the business capacity. And so this was not engineered, but it's also not surprising to see kind of recruiters' average pay be below market. And another thing to call out, there are only a couple of postings here, so it's not like we have a whole bunch of postings to base this data off. What I would actually want to see over time, and obviously if you run this weekly, over 3 to 6 months, you're going to start to collect this large data set of historic job postings. It's going to give you more data points. And once you've got at least 30 data points, that's generally the minimum that you want to see for what we call a normal distribution, which is actually going to give you a more predictable spread of the actuals. So it's kind of simulating what the market actually looks like with the data points that we have. But 30 data points is generally the minimum in order to be statistically significant. You can go down as low as 15, recognizing that you are going to have some gaps. And so when the data is this sparse, you're probably going to do some more qualitative analysis in addition to just pulling the quant analysis. And one thing that includes in here as well is the kind of the caveats. In case anyone wants to deep dive into the methodology that you've used, you can actually pull this table up. And so that will get you up and running. Obviously, once this is all going, you can go in, you can edit any of these files that we've set up. You can always go into the project settings here, look at what we've done. You can access them, change whatever you want. This is obviously free to download, free to use. Hopefully it's going to get you kind of up and running. If you do run this and you find it's helpful, please drop a comment below. It's always really helpful to know that the experiments and the projects that we're demonstrating here actually have some utility. If you want to see more of this, please subscribe. Please suggest anything that you think might be helpful. I always enjoy kind of deep diving into new areas, and this is the first thing we've done on compensation, and it's a whole topic that I would love to get into. So if you want to see more comp data, please just give me a nudge either on YouTube or LinkedIn, and I'm happy to jump in. Thanks very much.